The Eastern Conference Finals are over. The Boston Celtics are headed to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2010. But the Miami Heat still have a bone to pick with the officials after a made three-pointer by Max Strus was controversially overturned in the third quarter of Game 7 because Strus had stepped out of bounds. It has caused quite an uproar among fans because the officials decided almost 4 minutes after the fact to take away the points. Should that be allowed? Was he even out of bounds? And did that really help decide the game? Let's break it down. Sit back, relax, and take this in. Before we dive into today's episode, a friendly reminder to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. We are so close to 100,000 subs, and we want you to help us get there. All right, back to the show. With 11 minutes left in the third quarter on Sunday, Strus hit a corner three to cut the Heat deficit to 56-54, or so Miami thought. The Celtics then responded with an 8-0 run to extend their lead to 64-54 with 9 minutes left in the third. Shortly after, ESPN's broadcast announced that Strus's made three-pointer had been reviewed and that he had stepped out of bounds. The officials took the 3 points off of the board for the Heat, which made it a 13-point game. The Heat ended up losing the game by 4 points, leaving Heat fans irate over what could have been if the play had counted. For his part, Heat coach Max Strus said he was in shock that the call was reversed after nearly 4 minutes of game time had elapsed. First, and let's get this out the way, was Strus out of bounds? The NBA defines out of bounds in its rulebooks as when a player touches the floor or any object on or outside a boundary. So as long as Strus's left foot was hovering over the line but not touching the line, he's not out. There's a famous example of this in NBA history. In Game 2 of the 1999 Western Conference Finals, Spurs forward Sean Elliott hit a three from the corner to give San Antonio the lead and the win. But watch his feet.
Into Sean Elliott. He fires the three and hits it!
Place to step out of bounds. Watch his feet. He gathered himself and buried the three. Sean Elliott.
Elliott's feet were clearly hovering over the out of bounds line, but not touching it. In the case of Strus, however, from the camera angles we've seen, that's hard to distinguish. This angle shows that Strus's left foot was clearly touching the out of bounds line. Meanwhile, this photo shows that Strus's foot was hovering over it. But this video from the NBA's official's Twitter account shows that a slight dip in Strus's left foot may have caused him to step on the line, and that's what determined the call. Look, we're not going to get too deep into the weeds here. The ref said it was out of bounds, so it's out of bounds. But how could the officials overturn the play so long after the fact? According to the NBA's rulebook, there's no clear-cut answer to that. Under Rule 13, Section 2, the NBA states that its replay center can review a number of different matters after the fact, including out-of-bounds calls. Except there's no predetermined statute of limitations on this. So technically, the NBA can, for example, review something in the fourth quarter that happened in the first quarter and change their ruling. But that seems like a flaw in the system, and that's what had Heat coach Spo so ticked off.
The fact that it happened 3 to 4, 5 minutes later in game time, that does change the context of how you're playing.
He's got a point, and he followed that up by saying that the league should use this as a case study to adjust their rules accordingly. Spoelstra also acknowledged the call was not the reason the Heat lost a tightly contested Game 7. They certainly can point their fingers at themselves. The Heat shot 67% from the free throw line in Game 7 after entering the playoffs as the 5th best free throw shooting team in the league, averaging 80% on the season. They also shot 20% from 3 in Game 7, which would be the second worst three-point shooting night of the playoffs for them, right behind Game 5 of the series where they shot 16%. The Heat this season were the number 1 three-point shooting team in the league, hitting on nearly 38% a game. And despite all that, they still had an opportunity to win in the dying seconds, down 2 points when Jimmy Butler decided to pull up from 3 on a fast break instead of driving inside for a layup. There are a lot of moments you can point to in the game and see where the Heat could have done better. So to point at the Strus out of bounds call as the deciding factor is a stretch. But what do you think? Was it the right decision? Did the refs make a bad call? Should we start a series on YouTube on the greatest conspiracy theories in sports? Let us know in the comments, and as always, we'll see you next time.